Welcome to Weekly Tanya. We are continuing Shaar HaYichud VeHaEmunah, the gate of unity and faith. Specifically in which chapter?
7.
Chapter 7. And as I told you before, chapter 7 is the longest chapter of the 12 chapters. It's quite long. This is our third week in chapter 7. This is deep stuff over here. If you remember, in the beginning of chapter 7, the Alter Rebbe told us that we are going to understand how Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is Yichud Elah, and Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Elam Vod is Yichud Tata. What is Yichud Elah? Yichud Tata, the higher unity and the lower unity. The higher unity is actually pretty simple to explain. There's nothing but God, so it's all one, because there is only one. The lower unity is a little bit trickier to explain, because there's a world, but we have to understand that the nature of the existence of the world is such that although it exists, it does not have its own autonomous existence. And therefore, ultimately, we can truly still say that there is no thing other than God. Ein oid. And we got into explaining how that works. That there's this concept of Malchus, Hashem's kingship, where the king has a relationship with the subjects who are specifically not himself, not even his children and family and advisors, but something that's other than him. And the attribute of Malchus is the attribute of Hashem that relates to otherness. And specifically, we describe the dimensions of otherness as being time and space. Remember all this? If you were here? If you were here, do you remember all this? That time and space are basically the dimensions of finitude. And Hashem, being infinite, doesn't normally have a relationship with those dimensions, but through his attribute of kingship, whereby the king has a relationship with the subjects, then Hashem does have a relationship with time and space. And we also said that that corresponds to the divine name Aleph Daled Nun Yud, as opposed to the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, which represents Hashem's transcendence, where he cannot be described in time or space terms. Okay. Then we started to speak about Tzimtzum Kipshutai, which I told you was a really hot topic in those days. It was a really contentious issue. The Arizal introduced the concept of Tzimtzum, which literally means compression or contraction, and it's talking about how the infinite made space for the finite world. And we said that there were those, this is a little historical background, because the Alter Rebbe just says, I would like to now sort of counter those who believe that the Tzimtzum is kipshutai, that Tzimtzum is literal. So I give you a little historical background, that there were those who learned that, what does it mean that Hashem compressed himself? It means he literally vacated some area of existence within which creation could then be developed. And the Alter Rebbe says, well, not really, because everywhere, Hashem is everywhere, even within the Tzimtzum, it's really just concealment. It's not that he vacated. And then we had this whole logical proof, remember, well, Hashem knows everything by knowing himself, not by an acquisitional knowledge of knowing that which is outside of himself. And since he's knowing that which is changing, are you saying he's changing? You won't say he's changing. And the Alter Rebbe is speaking to his opponents. You won't say Hashem's changing. Oh, so then maybe you'll say that Hashem doesn't keep up with this changing knowledge. No, you won't say he doesn't keep up with it. You'll say he's omniscient. So how is he omniscient and unchanging when he knows about things that are changing? You have to say he knows it by knowing himself, not by acquiring knowledge outside of himself. That means that even the world, which is a product of Tzimtzum, is all happening within him. It's all happening within him. And then, of course, the Alter Rebbe said, and by the way, the Zohar says, Les asar ponimine, there's no place devoid of him. So, no place devoid of him. And that's kind of where we left off. Where we left off was the end of the quote from the SoulWords, which is a portion of Zohar, where we said, where the SoulWords said, that Hashem grasps everything, but nothing grasps him. And I think we left off with the words ad kan l'shaynai, meaning End of quote. End of quote of the Shaar HaYichud. And if this is all very confusing to you, hopefully it will become less confusing as we continue. Okay. V'reitza leimar, and that means to say, les man de tofis bei. There's nothing that grasps Hashem. She'ein mi, she'yispais ba'asagos sichlei mikol schalim ha'alyenim b'mohus v'atzmusa shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'mei shekos b'tekunim stima d'chol stimin. What does it mean nothing grasps him? It means that there is no intellect that can comprehend him, meaning grasp in the figurative sense of wrap your head around it. Like it says, Hashem is the hidden of all hiddens. Velas machshava tfisa bach klal. Or like we say, no thought can grasp you. Why do we say no thought can grasp you? A thought is, are you grasping? Are you holding on to it? No, we're not talking about spatially surrounding something. And even down here, in the physical world where we say Hashem is filling all worlds. He's filling all worlds, so that means he is being grasped? No. Paradoxically, perhaps, he is permeating all of existence, so he's running through it, and yet he's not contained by it. It's not, for instance, like a soul in a body. Shehi nispesis teich haguf ad shemispa'elis mekabelis shinui mishinuya haguf etzayroi ma'kois oikrirus oichamimus ho'esh v'chayetze. For instance, the body is contained in the soul is contained in the body. What does that mean? It means, obviously, it's not talking spatially. The soul is energy, it's spirituality. But we're talking about it being contained in the body. It means that it becomes affected by the changes of the body. And he gives examples like pain that it experiences from being struck, or from cold, or from hot, or anything else like that. So being contained means that it actually then is subject to the changes of the container. That is not so when we speak of Hashem. He does not experience any changes because of the world's changes from summer to winter, or from day to night. Like it says, Gam even darkness does not obscure for you, and night, like day, shines. Meaning to say that Hashem, yes, he permeates all existence. He's in it and running through it, but not limited by it. Okay. Let's continue. Not limited by it, and essentially unaffected by it, meaning his essence does not change because of it. He is not contained within the worlds, even though he fills them. Yes, it sounds paradoxical to us, because we think, well, how can you say something is inside of something else, but that something else isn't containing that something that's in it? We're thinking spatially, and that's causing us to think in that rigid way. What we're saying is Hashem is the fabric of reality, but by being the fabric, let me back up. Created reality, okay? Because he is reality, but what we call reality, created reality. He is the fabric of reality, and yet being the fabric of reality is not a limitation that created reality imposes upon him in any way. And that is also the concept of Seviv Kolaman. We spoke about Mamali Kolaman, now we're speaking about Seviv Kolaman. Mamale means literally he fills. Seviv means literally he surrounds all worlds. Pirush, what does it mean, derech mashal? It's a metaphor. When we say Seviv Kol Almin, he surrounds all worlds, we do not mean spatially. We're speaking about spiritual concepts anyways. There's no space. We mean metaphorically. Let's say, for instance, a person is imagining a concept. Could be an abstract concept, a dvar chochma, or it could be a physical object that he's picturing. But the point is, he has this in his head. You got it? You have it in your mind? Picture a card. It's the Queen of Spades. Okay, you picture it, you got it in your head, right? We say, do you have it in your mind? You got it in your head? So that person, let's say, is thinking of something or imagining or could even remembering something that he's seen, but the point is he has it in his mind. That thing is, so to speak, in his thoughts or in his mind. But it's not literally surrounding. His thoughts or his mind are not literally surrounding that thing. The prophet says, my thoughts, speaking for Hashem, my thoughts, meaning Hashem's thoughts, are not like your thoughts. His knowledge of things, of every created being, his thought about things, every created thing, actually does surround it, in the true sense of surrounding it. Not in the spatial sense, but in the most literal sense. Because after all, it is Hashem's knowledge of that thing and his thinking about that thing, which is the highest, which is the vitality that gives existence and life to that thing. So we say, when Hashem is, think of a card, think of a number, 1 through 20. When Hashem is thinking of something, it is not just like when we say that we have something in our mind. It literally is in him. And that is reflected in as much as that thing is getting all of its existence and its life from the fact that Hashem is thinking it.
So when Hashem stops thinking, that's when the created existence stops being?
Well, we spoke about in chapter 1 that it's really Hashem speaking the world into being. So you can get into an interesting discussion about what's the difference of thinking the world from Hashem's perspective and speaking the world from Hashem's perspective. But to simplify it, for the sake of moving on here in the chapter, let's just say that when he thinks of it, that leads to him speaking of it. And he doesn't speak of it unless he's thought of it. And of course, remember, we're not speaking about human thought or human speech. Okay. So Seviv Kol Almin means that it's Hashem's knowledge of that thing which is the source of its life and existence. Umamalik Kol Almin, and what does it mean he fills all worlds? That's the vitality that is invested within that created being. What does it mean? It's invested within it. It's hyper-condensed, the energy, in accordance with the capacity of that created being. Every created being has a different capacity. So the godly energy doesn't want to overwhelm it. It has to be the right voltage, so it doesn't short circuit. That means every created being is finite, quantitatively and qualitatively. For instance, let's take the sun. And why is he using the sun as his example? Because the sun is massive. And yet, it's still finite because it's a created being. So as massive as it is, it's still quantifiable. For instance, the sun. its body has a limit, quantitatively. Shehu kamei kuf samach zayin pamim kegedel kadera oretz, which is about 167 times the size of the earth. I don't have the numbers handy because I never really got too into this, but I do remember at one point checking out what the astronomers are saying, and then I found a comment of the Rebbe, which makes it all make sense. The Rebbe has a comment where he says there's a different figure that the astronomers have, how much bigger the sun is than the earth, but they're talking about mass. And this figure is actually taken from the Rambam, and it's talking about either circumference or diameter. I can't remember, but the point is not talking about mass. It's talking about like a length. And that even that number is a little bit off, 167 times, but because the astronomers actually have a smaller figure, but the Rebbe says the Rambam's figure, I remember the word that actually the Rebbe uses, the protuberance. Protuberance, meaning how the sun rays shine off of the sun. That's also included in the measurement of the sun. The point is...
So the rays are also finitude or infinitude?
Everything's finitude. The point is, this answer is not going to mean much to you because you probably didn't have the question, but there's some nerd watching right now who's going crazy, he's Googling with a fury, and I just want you to know, the 167 number, if you know what you're counting and how to count it, it works, okay? Just so I didn't want somebody to freak out when he heard the 167. That can't be 167. Okay, so at any rate, yeah, the 167, if you're measuring not the mass of the sun, but you're talking about like from the one edge of it to the other edge of it, and you're including the, I don't know what it's called, they're not rays, but some type of, I don't know, the stuff that comes off the sun. At any rate, it's 167 times. Protuberances, that's right. Okay, the point is it's 167 times. And why are we saying that? We're saying that because even the sun, as massive as it is, it has a finite quantity. It doesn't go on forever. So ve'echuse ma'ilose, so quantitatively it's finite, and also ve'echuse ma'ilose, qualitatively it's finite. Hu oirei, meaning its luminescence. Gam ken yesh le gvul ad kama yuchol lahoyer. There's a limit to how bright it is. So he calls the size of the sun its quantity, or its quantitative measurement. He calls its brightness its qualitative measurement. But either way, they're limited. They're finite. Ki lo yor labilti tachlis miyachashu nivra. It doesn't shine forever because it's a limited being. Now you're going to say, well, light really does shine forever. It never stops. Yeah, that's true, but that's true of the flash on your iPhone as well. It goes out into space and never stops. We're talking about the fact, yeah, that nerd on YouTube, he's asking all those clever questions. Okay, don't worry. Sometimes I'm the nerd watching other people's YouTubes and asking the same questions. But not those particular questions, but I'll just say it really simple, how a 5-year-old could understand it. I know Pluto's not a planet anymore, but it's not as bright on Pluto as it is on Earth, and it's the same sun. Because it doesn't have an atmosphere. Okay, I don't know. You're causing too much trouble, YouTube guy. At any rate, the point is, by the way, there are other stars in the Milky Way, and they're not giving us too much light, and they're brighter than the sun. Okay? So I know light goes forever, but still, the point is, there's a limit to how much light effectively reaches us from the sun. And that's all he's saying. Don't get hung up on particulars. He's just saying, as massive as it is both quantitatively and qualitatively limited. And so too all created beings are limited. Because oh no, the nerd on YouTube is going to really flip a lid with this. It says this is it's from.
We're all gonna have to go to YouTube and read all of these nerds' comments.
You don't see the comments? Oh, you never go and.
No, I never. But now we're all going to.
Now you're going to go up to the comments.
No, we're not
I'm subjected to these comments. Yes. Okay, so, and by the way, I do not use the word nerd as a pejorative. You know that. It's the highest, not the highest compliment, but it's a compliment of sorts. Okay, so the Gemara says that it is a journey of 500 years from the earth to the firmament. I'm not even going to get into that one. All I'm going to say is, the point is, it's quantifiable. And that's all the point he's making is, even when we're talking about astronomical figures, astronomical literally, they're still finite.
Everything is.
Everything besides Hashem. Exactly. That's the point he's making. V'im kain, if so, then the energy that's in these limited things has to be highly compressed because Hashem is infinite. How are we getting the infinite to power the finite unless there's this Tzimtzum, this compression? You send like a compressed file, so it takes up less memory. And you send like, I don't even know the compression rates nowadays, but you send like a picture that would take like a gigabyte, and instead it's, I don't know, a tenth of that. But imagine if you're trying to compress infinity. Okay, so that's what this Tzimtzum does.
So that all creation is compressed infinity?
Yes, correct. So everything first has to be intensely compressed. He calls it Tzimtzumim rabim v'atzumim. Rabim means many, so there are many compressions, and atzumim means mighty, intense. Until Hashem's power and light can yield these limited beings. Remember, the source of all life is the speech of Hashem that we spoke about in chapter 1, his 10 utterances of creation, let there be, that is invested in the world, but comes from the Torah, and Torah and Hashem are one, like the Zohar says and is quoted at the end of chapter 1. Hashem's speech is actually, Hashem's speech is infinite, and it could spread forever. It would spread forever. And without any Tzimtzum would just create infinite worlds, whatever that means. There wouldn't be a world, a physical world certainly, but there wouldn't be worlds as we know them. Because just like Hashem is infinite, so too his attributes and everything that he does are infinite. Because the energy that comes from his attributes, which is chesed and rachamim and all the other attributes that come into the world through his speech, which he speaks into being, those are infinite attributes, and the world was built on chesed. B'dvar Hashem v'ruch piv shehanasta kli levush lechesed zeh. And it's his speech, which is the vehicle which carries these attributes. Ki had dein kamtzed l'v'shemine ubei, like that snail / possibly turtle whose clothing are of it itself. Remember I told you about that? Remember I told you my daughter found a snail in the garden? And I told her, Kahadein kamtza de luvashay minei ubeg. The turtle or the snail, same thing. You don't say, oh, I can't see it because I'm seeing its shell. Well, the shell is it. Yeah. So in this case, what he's saying is that the divine speech, let me just make sure I'm saying this correctly, but yeah, that the divine speech is acting as the vehicle to the infinite attributes, much like the shell is a suit which contains the snail or the turtle. Meaning to say that at the end of the day, it's all infinity. And so, in this strange paradoxical way, the finite is infused with the infinite. Now, how is that possible? The finite does not have the capacity to contain the infinite. So we say, well, that's what Tzimtzum is. Tzimtzum is this compression whereby the infinite actually is present right here, but effectively the finite will not feel that and thereby be overwhelmed out of existence. He continues, Ela shetzimtzum, HaKadosh Baruch Hu ha'or v'achayis yuchel ispashit meruach piv. Hashem condensed the degree of his attributes that can be manifested through his speech. Vilbishay teich teirufei oisye shalasar memoris v'tzirufei tzirufeihen b'chilufei utumuris ha'esis atum ubecheshbainon umisparan. What did Hashem do? We learned this in chapter 1, but he's repeating it again. Hashem invested his energy into the combinations of letters and combinations of combinations, recombinations, and switching the letters, and substituting the letters, and even swapping them out for their numerical value, which is an even greater degree of concealment. Remember, we spoke about this when we learned chapter 1, but I'll repeat it here. That the original 22 building blocks of creation are the 22 letters of the Aleph base, which were used to speak the world into being in the 10 utterances of creation as recorded in the creation account in Bereshis. Those letters are then used like Scrabble tiles, forgive the crude analogy, whereby those building blocks can be arranged and rearranged. Think of it as your periodic table of elements with a finite number, a relatively small number of elements. You can create all of the different molecules that exist on the planet and not on the planet. And then and with each one of these combinations and recombinations, there is a diminution of the life force to allow the created being to receive life without being overwhelmed. And the greatest diminution of the life force, meaning the greatest masking or concealment of the life force, is when the letters get switched for numbers, and that the relationship between the original word is no longer even its original letters, or even letters which were switched for comparable letters, but letters that were transferred into a whole different currency, meaning into numbers and then back into letters. And then that means that there's an even further masking of the life force, which allows the created being to handle the flow of energy that it's receiving.
Is there an example of something like that?
Yeah, he's going to give one. Shekol chiluf utmura meira al yiridus ha'or v'achayus memedrega lemedrega. Every time that the letters are switched or substituted, that shows another stage of diminishing the life force. Dahainu, sheyuchol livrei lahachis bruyim shemedregas Eichus mailasim hi bechusam medregas eichus mailas abroim hanivroim aisius v'tevis atzm shabasar maimaris. In other words, what that means to say is it enables there to be creation of things that are on a lower qualitative level than the quality of the original creations that come into being directly from the 10 utterances. Shabahan mislabish HaKadosh Baruch Hu bechveda v'atzm shein midosav, because in the original Asara Maimaris, Hashem is directly investing his infinite midos. So, for instance, using gematria, using mathematical equivalents of the letters. Meira al miut ha'oir v'achayis miut achar miut. That shows a real masking of the energy. Until there's nothing left but he calls it the most hinder part, the most back part of the letter. I guess behind the letter is its numerical value. Kama mine koiches medreges klulais ba'oir v'chayes hazeh hamelubash b'tziruf zeh shel teva zu. So the number of the letter, or even, actually it's more than that. It's not just the number of the letter, it's the number of the word. Because what happens is you combine all of the numerical values of the letters into one sum total of the word, and then when you break it apart, you're breaking it into different denominations already. So it's like if for instance, if you had like Aleph Beis Gimel, which isn't a word, but Aleph Beis Gimel, which is 1, 2, 3. So then you have 6, and then you go and when you switch that back into letters, you turn it into base, 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 or Gimel, Gimel, right? So where is even the Aleph anymore? Okay. All right. Somebody please do not tell Terrence Howard about any of this.
From
What?
From perspective, gematria is like the lowest thing, but for us,
Yeah, people like gematrias. Why is that? Why do people get excited about gematria?
validation.
Why does every cheesy Shabbat Bracha speech have to start with a gematria? What?
It makes sense.
I know. You want? I'll tell you a quick story. I wasn't there. Manis Friedman was there. He was a bacher in yeshiva, and Rabbi Yoel was teaching a mimer, and he was explaining. Rabbi Yoel was explaining why this particular concept corresponds to this other concept. You know, like we often do in Chassidus. Like this thing symbolizes this thing on another level, and this bacher couldn't get it. He was like, "Why? Why are they connected?" He explained it again. But why? Why are they connected? He explained it again. And so the bacher couldn't get it. Finally, he asked like a third time, why are they connected? So Rabbi Yoel said, because they have the same gematria. And he was like, oh. And Yoel flew off. He just went crazy. What? Because they have the, now you're happy. Now you're sad. Like, I don't even know if they had the same gematria. But that made him furious. Like that all of a sudden makes it, now it's all good. Okay. I don't know. People like gematria. People love gematria. I don't know why. It's okay. What? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Okay. We're learning Shaar HaYichud VeHaEmunah, which is second volume of Tanya. We're on Perek Zion, chapter 7, and we're understanding the manner in which created existence poses no threat to the concept of Hashem's complete unity. We're understanding the underlying mechanics whereby the finite arises from the infinite. We're understanding it better so that we're not just taking it on faith. Oh yeah, I believe you. Somehow, although I see all this stuff, there is only God. We're actually understanding how this happens so that our faith can be more intelligent. That's what's happening. That's what we're doing. Okay, we're almost done with the chapter, which is very exciting. Okay, so we're talking about gematria, how it's a real concealment. I said that. And then after all this concealment, these layers of concealment, you can eventually get life force which is diminished enough that it can animate things that really don't show any life outwardly, like stones and dirt that are inanimate. Ki Evan derech mashal. So for instance, you wanted an example. Evan, stone, aleph, base, nun. Shema, its name, which is Evan. Moira indicates ki shosha m'shem ha'oila ban b'mispare. A stone, don't ask me how, but somehow derives from the name Ban.
It's a hook.
Well, it's, I don't know if it is, but yeah, okay. The point is that this inanimate object, which doesn't seem to exhibit much energy, has, if you trace it back, it has a direct relationship with this lofty divine name. So, yeah.
There was just some article in some Chabad something about different names for stone, and Evan was one of them, but I forgot the other one. But the other one was not made with oil, and if you extract the letters from the other one's word, you come back with Shemens, Shemenun, which was the oil. It's like petrified rock or non-petrified, whatever it is. So.
Okay, not really aware of any of that, but sounds cool. All right.
Look up
Yeah, you bring it in here? Okay. Okay, maybe send me the link. Okay, we're almost done. Now the name Ban itself is very, very lofty. But it comes down, 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 until it's diminished enough that it can enliven the stone without the stone getting overwhelmed. And that is the soul, the nefesh of that inanimate object. The compressed life force is its soul. That's the life force that is giving that stone existence and life at every single second, like we explained, that the enlivening and the creating of every single thing is ongoing every single second. And this is what it means he fills all worlds. Not Sovev Kol Almin, he surrounds all worlds. In other words, when the life force needs to be diminished in a particular way that is appropriate to the particular created being that it's enlivening, that's what we call Mamale. Sovev doesn't have to fit itself, so to speak. Correct, right. So the Tzimtzum is primarily Mamale. Very good. Okay, correct. All right. V'kol koyach medrega yochel livrei bruyim kefi bechinas medrega zu gam kein le'ein ketz v'tachas bekamus v'chusim lahachiyas adiyad. Now at every level, there's a capacity to create on that level also infinitely. Relatively infinitely, I think, is what it means. Meaning to sustain it for eternity on that level. Because after all, we're talking about Hashem, who is unlimited, so there's nothing to stop it. It's not a finite resource. It's not like it ever runs out. It's just that qualitatively it will be more diminished, meaning, again, relative infinity. That even after this concealment or this compression, whereby we have these lower level planes of reality, but relative, meaning within the context of that plane of reality itself, it theoretically can last forever, because there's no scarcity. It's drawing from an infinite source. Let me just reread this last sentence in the chapter. It's just that the thing will not have the same level of quality as if it were, if the thing will not have the same level of quality that it would if it were taken directly from the 10 utterances, because it couldn't handle that. But still, even when it is created by way of combinations and recombinations and substitutions and numerical values of letters, which diminishes the life force, there's still this infinity there, because relative to its level, it really could last forever. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 7. The point is, what we're understanding is that even within the created realm, with all of its lower level finite beings, we do not say that that is an indication that Hashem, who is infinite, is absent from that plane of reality. We say that he's very much present in that reality, and we've just explained how that is possible. Okay, that's the upshot of it all. Okay. Got it? Amazing group. We would like you to comment on YouTube if you enjoyed, if you found the comments, the class participation enriching. And we would like to take requests. You know that you can donate on YouTube? You can give like a gift. So for a monetary gift of any amount, we will read your comment at the next week's class. If it's appropriate. Yeah, I'll have to. But if it's appropriate, yes, we will read comments that if someone gives $1 or any amount or any currency, sometimes we get in foreign denominations. We will, Bitcoin, I'm not sure. We will read your comment next week.